players moving around, guys. Domani Jackson, previously of Southern California, attends Alabama practice in Southern California on Thursday. Shortly thereafter, we learn he has joined or will join the Alabama Crimson Tide for the 2024 season. I'll start with you, Clint. First, what do you think this means in relation to corners for 2024 as far as NFL draft and those type of things? Is this indicative of some expected movement, not just in terms of scholarship number guys, but specifically a guy like Terrion Arnold? And you anticipate Kool-Aid McKinstry. Is that something that came to mind to you when you saw this news?
It was one of the first two things that came to mind. That was actually the first. And then you say, okay, if they were bringing back Terrion Arnold and they had Trey Amos ready to go as a guy they think is going to step up and be a starter next year, what becomes I understand Domani Jackson's a very talented kid. I still think he's got some growth and development that needs to happen. So it's not like he's a surefire plug and play from day one type of player. He's not coming with those expectations like you kind of thought was going to be coming with Eli Ricks. But he's an experienced guy. He started quite a few games at USC. He played over 700 snaps. He had 11 starts this year. He's played, good football at times. I think he's been a little bit inconsistent. I think the development of that entire USC defense has been pretty rough. So you can't really blame him from that standpoint. You get him with Alabama's coaching staff, and you have to believe in their ability to get guys where they need to be. There's a reason he was the top corner in the country last year. Got the size speed combination that you look for. He's got the length. He's a willing run defender, physical at the line of scrimmage, plays the press pretty well. But he's still figuring some things out too. Like, he was pretty technically sound coming out of high school, but there's some things from a instinctual standpoint and just understanding the position and the nuances of it. I still think he's growing in those areas. But one thing I'll say, when you look at him compared to the rest, let's say Kool-Aid McKinstry and Terrion Arnold, which I think is very realistic at this point, both those two guys are gone. They're both projected to go in the first round right now. It would make sense. You got to let those guys go and say, go be great. But if that happens, I understand Alabama has a ton of talent. I mean, Des Riggs, former 5-star player, Jalen Mbakwe, 5-star player, Zabian Brown, borderline top 50 player, Jaleel Hurley, former top 50 player, Earl Little, top 100. So you've got, options from a talent standpoint, but collectively, all those guys that I just mentioned have a total of about 50 to 55 snaps in their entire career, young careers. So it's the same situation, a couple of years ago, it was Jahmyr Gibbs, where the running back room, you like the talent that was coming back, you like the ability of Jace McClellan and Roydell Williams, but when you have a caliber of player like Jahmyr Gibbs enter the transfer portal, that piques your interest, but also it was the fact that they wanted to add that experience element to the room. Same thing last year with Trez Marshall. They liked Jahad Campbell. They liked the way he was developing. They thought he could be a really good player. But, with Deontay Lawson, started a little bit, but he didn't have a ton of experience. And so what do? They go get an experienced guy in Trezman Marshall. I think it's the same situation here. You have the young talent, and if Des Riddick ends up stepping up and becoming that great player we all think he's capable of being, great. And that's, but if you get that from Mbakwe right here from the get-go, from the jump, that's great. But you've brought in another experienced, talented corner who can, also develop and become that great player. And I think that benefits the entire room, because there's a lot of bodies right now in that room, and they're all really talented. But the experience was really lacking if you are making that assumption that Kool-Aid McKinstry and Terrion Arnold were making a jump to the NFL. And that's where I think Domani Jackson, can benefit this team the most in 2024. But also, it's not just bringing in a guy who doesn't have a lot of upside himself. Like, he could end up turning into a superstar too. So I'll be curious to see how he ends up developing.
Jimmy, we've talked about it in the past. Nick Saban's not big on hoping when it comes to roster management for an upcoming season. We saw it with Trey Amos, the addition of Trey. And whereas he was more of a depth provider, showed up pretty damn big in the win over Georgia. Jalen Key, Alabama goes that direction at safety. I don't think this speaks as much to the thought process involving the development of the younger players. I just think it's, look, we're trying to maintain a level of play here, And we're wide open to Des Ricks coming along, Antonio Kite. You anticipate it from Trey Amos stepping forward again in next season. But you always need at least 3 legit dudes at corner, at least 3, because you start factoring in the potential for the star position. So even if Terrion Arnold came back, right? Even if Terrion Arnold did come back and you add Trey Amos to go along with him, you still need a legit third corner, and you'll damn sure take a fourth if you can get it. And Domani Jackson's a guy, I guess, an injury a couple of years ago, had a knee injury that kind of slowed his start at USC. Clint, I've heard the same things in terms of his all-around play. You watch him on tape at Modern Day in high school, really excels in press and more in man. But there's intricacies to coverage with zone and the pattern matching and different stuff that Nick Saban does, similar to Eli Ricks in some ways. I'm not saying he's the same player, going to have maybe some of the same issues Eli did, but there's a lot more to it. And, best player available right now looks like Domani Jackson at corner where the portal's concerned.
Yeah, it reminds me a little bit of LT Overton, the other portal guy. I mean, a 5-star from 2 cycles ago who has a ton of natural ability, hasn't really panned out yet, but there's still a lot of hope there. And I think that's what you see in Domani is a lot of hope. I mean, in terms of a projection, he's projected to be a great player at this level. Hadn't happened yet, but the tools are all there. The tools are there, and they know him. It seems to be not a common thread, not in 100% of the portal pickups, but in a lot of these portal pickups, you can see the pattern of Nick Saban having a comfort level with the guys he knows. He knows Domani. He knows LT Overton from recruiting. He knew Henry To'o. They recruited Jermaine Burton out of high school. They know these guys, and I think it helps with the comfort level of knowing, okay, well, what is he going to be helpful to the locker room, or is he disruptive to the locker room? Because you can disrupt a locker room bringing in an older kid who expects to start. When you've got Ricks and Hurley and these young guys, Antonio Kite, who are like, hey, it's my turn, and now you're bringing in this junior, that can really disrupt things. You bring in the wrong personality. But I think Nick Saban seems to have this comfort level with kids he knows, and the talent speaks for itself in terms of, I think we all saw Domani's high school tape. I mean, this is a high toolsy kid that's going to have a chance to win the spot. In terms of Terrion and Kool-Aid, I mean, anything can happen. No final decisions. But I know myself, I'm not going to be surprised if Terrion returns. I'll be really surprised if Kool-Aid does. But I'll be not surprised to see Terrion back for another year. Still gives Domani a chance to compete with Trey Amos and also that star spot.
Yeah, Clint, you talk about critical factors, and Jimmy said it, the familiarity with Jackson as well. But critical factors at corner, he's 6'1", he weighs 190 pounds, and he ran a 10.25 in the 100 back in high school. I'd say those are the critical factors that you got to kind of check.
And he's physical. He's got that size. He's got that. I mean, when you talk about prototypical Nick Saban Alabama corners, the size, 190, length, 6'1", long arms, physical, ultra athletic. I mean, the long speed is just on a completely different level than a lot of your average corners. Like Eli Ricks, in his wildest dreams, couldn't do some of the things from a speed standpoint that Domani Jackson can. I think he's got a little bit of positional flexibility. We talked about star. I certainly think he's capable of that. If he doesn't ever develop the instincts necessarily that he needs as a perimeter guy, he could end up playing star. He's got the physicality for it. He's got the size for it. Or it's also possible that he can end up making a move to safety. He could pull an Eddie Jackson. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but I'm saying that if the development isn't where it needs to be, I mean, in Alabama's system, those perimeter corners are asked to do a lot. They're left on islands in a lot of situations. You've got to be able to understand the defense on such a level. And if you mess up, it's touchdown. I mean, you're such an exploitable position, and it's, put on full display. It's one of the most exploitable positions on the field as far as, if you're not playing good football, teams are going to take advantage of it. And, so if he ends up not developing, which I fully believe in this staff's, them being able to get that out of him. But if they don't, I think he's got enough talent. He's physical. Like I said, he's the run defender that you look for. He's almost a little bit too physical at times. I think that's probably a big issue. He's got a little bit of Tyrion Arnold in him, where he gets a little grabby at times.
He's like a boundary corner, but he can fly.
He can fly.
I mean, that's an interesting mix. Usually that's your more physical corner in there, but he can run. There's no doubt about it.